evening and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home caregivers and those affected in their world. These are the children, the parents, the extended family, and everyone who loves them. And our goal is to offer you real-life topics and learning through discussing real issues and offering real solutions. And tonight I am very excited to welcome our guest, Dr. Brandie Nemchenko, who is a serial entrepreneur who's been saving women from painful pregnancies since 2003 as the founder and CEO of Experience Chiropractic in southeastern Pennsylvania. So welcome, Dr. Brandie. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this.
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we're going to ask you to share just a little bit about why you're so passionate about this, and then we're going to dig into our topic for the night. So, based on her own troubled pregnancy, experience as a trauma paramedic, and her knowledge of sports medicine, Dr. Brandie has set out to educate and empower pregnant women and providers through the Bloom philosophy. This evidence-based philosophy tackles the common misconceptions behind pain during pregnancy and offers avenues to alleviate the common but not normal, and we talk about that a lot in our industry, villains of pregnancy. With a knack for storytelling, a flair for detail, and a hint of humor, Dr. Brandie published her first book on what you don't expect when you're expecting in 2018. And for those of us in this world, we get the pun there, absolutely, and released the second edition in 2021. Dr. Brandie is also renowned for her podcast appearances and her ample lectures and webinars, all while kicking butt, running her own business, and expanding her personal brand. It is Dr. Brandie's passion to bring awareness and help to those who care for pregnant women to be aware of all the myriad of ways to help them. So I am super excited about that, and we're going to really dig into that aspect and discuss villains of pregnancy. But share with our audience just a little bit about why you're so passionate around this.
Yeah, I talk about I'm the least likely person to be a chiropractor. And I think having that perspective of not being brought up in the industry, right? Not being brought to a chiropractor and actually having a bias toward them. Both my kids have led me to being who I am, which I think is so powerful, and it grounds me in this is what I'm meant for, right? And this is what I was put on earth for. So my first child, due to an injury, she broke her leg. She had a heavy limp. When she got the cast off, they tried to re-break her leg. They used Botox. Somebody said, have you ever tried a chiropractor? I said, you're nuts. You know, in a more flagrant way, because I'm a paramedic, so I have a little bit of a colorful vocabulary, but I actually thought they were nuts. Like, what does a chiropractor have to do with a broken leg? And until I went to a chiropractor and sat in the parking lot and cried for 30 minutes because I was terrified, because she was the most precious thing in my entire world. She had me stop being a paramedic because I wouldn't stop crying on SIDS cases, and which didn't bother me before. So you change during pregnancy. So she had results in one visit. The chiropractor explained that, you know, I wasn't going to even let him touch her, but he explained the weight of her cast on her little body, her little 1-year-old body, sort of pulled or stretched the ligaments in her lower back. And I'm like, that makes sense. It's not voodoo. It's not chicken, you know, sacrificing or crystals or whatever. And as an evidence-based paramedic, that made sense to me. So I consented to have her treated, and she walked out like nothing happened. So she would have had a harder road. So when I decided to go to chiropractic school, I was going to cure all the kids in the world from limps. And that was my mission, because as a parent, we can all speak as doulas and moms, that experience changes who you are, right? Mm-hmm. It brings out things that are deeply visceral and you didn't think as deep before. Mm-hmm. My second child, I got a job in a gym. I took care of professional athletes. I loved it. I was an athlete myself. It was sexy. It was sleek. It was very about results and keeping people working out. I took care of a lot of the Eagles cheerleaders. So like very high end, needing to perform stuff, right? Pregnancy in chiropractic is taught as being like a woman walking in a field with flowers, and it's delicate, and you know they're a stay-at-home mom, and like they didn't really hit on real life, honestly, you know, real life that I was exposed to as a paramedic, and mainstream of having that evidence-based sort of like just straight up sports, sports approach. So never put the two together. 17 weeks into my second pregnancy that I planned for 4 years. This is before Pinterest. So it's just being a business owner. I think when you guys are launching your practice, it's consuming, right? It's consuming, and you have to hustle, and it sort of takes over your life. And I didn't think it was fair to have a kid at that time. So when I got my practice stable, I got pregnant. And the only thing I had been taught in chiropractic was you can practice till about 8 months. And I saw about 3/4 of the patients. My husband saw a quarter. I was running the practice. And 17 weeks, something happened unexpectedly that I did not expect. And they told me you can't practice anymore. And I love what I do. And I'm very good at what I do. And it's spiritual for me. It's the icing on a cupcake. And when somebody tells you can't do what you love, what you get validation and who you are, the progression in pregnancy, you're going to change as a mom. We all know that to watch that is beautiful. That's why I call my business bloom, because it's almost like you know what they're getting for Christmas, and you know how magical it is, and they have no idea. For me, that was so, I never thought of it that way, and it never directly impacted me, where I literally had to make hard choices between paying my mortgage, because if I didn't practice, right, I couldn't support. And there's so much guilt with, my daughter's the only child and was the only grandchild, and she was very spoiled, and she was the center of my world, right? She came to work with us and entertained all the patients, but there was so much guilt of already having a second baby. And I had planned her, but I didn't expect that my disability and what happened to me, and I felt responsible, would affect my husband, my mortgage, the ability to feed my child. And you're put in a situation, and I was a doctor, so I think I do well. I do, I'm not, there's other women that are in worse situations that you have to face. Do I hurt you'll hurt yourself all day long. But as a mom, I think understanding that is so deep, and that you would never hurt that child, but then you have a child at home, because most of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is the second pregnancy, right? The first pregnancy, you expect to have pain it's the second pregnancy that sort of knocks you, where you're like, why is this happening at 5 months, right? So it was then that during my downtime, I got them to agree to let me to just see pregnancy. And the reason for that is physiological, that one, my husband's 6'5" and he's from Russia, and he's sort of intimidating. And I felt like they were more delicate, which I found out they're not, but it's a very specialized, sacred, high risk, needing to be excellent care. During my downtime, I developed protocols where I applied sports medicine, which is like tuna fish to peanut butter. Like I put the two together, because athletes, you can get an athlete as a chiropractor back on the field in a few hours, or during the game. Like you can turn around a rolled ankle and get them right back on the field so they can play and finish what they started. Why don't we think that women deserve that? And for me, I've been gaslit by my providers unintentionally. And I want to speak about that very clearly, because they don't know, and they don't have the training. And over COVID, so I've been doing this for 2006, but over COVID, I was lecturing to chiropractors and patients and mom groups and provider groups and doulas and midwives, and meeting with hospitals, right? Why I realized they don't know. They really, they're not doing this to be mean to you. They don't know. And their education is so specialized and so high risk. Their goal is to get the baby out of you as healthy as you can. They're not worried about your low back pain. So when they tell their patients, this is normal, what do you expect? You're pregnant, like that's every day, all day long. And then their partner doesn't understand. And their mom's like, I popped out 4 kids in the 80s. I don't understand why you're having a problem, and their identity is wrecked because who they were before. I think our society doesn't talk about who they were before. Sometimes you can't be that person. That's normal. That's embracing. I think we just expect women just to plow through, and hormonally you're the same, and emotionally you're the same. And we truly gaslight women for one of the most sacred. And that's why what you guys do is so powerful, to be an advocate for that. And that's why I'm passionate about helping you, because through helping you understand that these things are common and not normal, and you can identify it. So that's when I developed the Villains of Pregnancy.
Mhm.
because of I have a really weird sense of humor, Tonya. But I use humor to deal with pain. That's my coping strategy. And I find as a paramedic, I still use that, and there's appropriate uses of that. But in practice, if somebody's ex-husband is causing them to be stressed, I would name a knot after their ex and we would rail it. And I found it very therapeutic that they could connect. Instead of thinking it's their fault, it provided some humor of like, we're going to squish that guy out of your back. So providing these 6 archetypes of stuff that happens all the time. There's a few that you know, like low back pain and sciatica, you expect those, but there's ones that they don't expect, and medical providers still don't get it. And there's structural reasons why it happens, because the system is overloaded like an athlete.
Absolutely. And I love that you're so passionate about this. I love that what you're doing came from your children. That's ultimately where a lot of what I do and what I teach came also.
Yep.
And I think that motivates us in a different way sometimes. But let's talk a little bit about this, because I want to first address the concept of evidence-based chiropractic, because a lot of people automatically hear the words chiropractic and they automatically think, ooh, woo-woo things, right? And I know firsthand that chiropractic helped my son post-birth when the traditional medical community said there's nothing we can do. And chiropractic changed our outcome. And so I'm a huge proponent of it, but people don't often think evidence-based and chiropractic together. So tell us a little bit about what that means.
So coming from a medical background, when I got out of school, things were harder for me, because typically when you go to a chiropractor, this is traditional chiropractic, they talk about subluxations and they talk about nerve interference. And the philosophy is presented, if that makes sense. And sometimes they have enough information to be dangerous, honestly. Like the stuff that we learn in chiropractic school with being a paramedic, and I was a TA, it's enough to make you dangerous. And you may not have the depth to understand and see it. Does that make sense? Where you understand there's different perspectives, that it's good to work with MDs and they're not, to understand it's not black and white, right? And so for me, Jeannie Ohm, who was the pioneer, she has since passed, she was it with the ICPA. That's how you find chiropractors who are passionate and trained in currently that's all that exists pretty much. She was 20 minutes from me, and she had home births and she had 5 kids, and you know, she talked about eating, like her patients would talk about eating placentas and stuff. I had never tried coconut oil, Tonya. I drank Diet Cokes and I had 2 epidurals and inductions, and how I was is not common in chiropractic, right? So again, I'm not the right, I'm the most unlikely person to do what I do. But for me, when I started to focus on this and speak my truth, and again, I want to make very clear, I serve on the state board, the state association as a liaison, because there's a lot of dividing chiropractic. There's what's called straights, right? Who are traditional, philosophical, wellness-based. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a definite place for that. That's amazing. That probably, but for me, what I resonate with more, and I couldn't change, I actually tried to invest myself in changing. I can't change my worldview, and I can't say something that I don't live myself, right? I gravitate more with my athletic training, my paramedic stuff, being an athlete, to treatment plan, almost like a physical therapist, not discounting what I do, you know, what chiropractic does and the amazing power, which has kept me in this, because to be a chiropractor, there's a lot of discrimination and there's a lot of misinformation in the media, and it's bad. It's if we're going to talk about who's dangerous, let's not talk about chiropractors that have $800 malpractice, you know, and the top 2 things are sexual harassment and hot packs, and not strokes, right? When 180,000 people a year die from medical mistakes. Like, let's just be honest. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not bashing either one, but like, if you're going to bash me or think that I'm dangerous, please accept your own risk, or please be honest. That's this. So for me to take the soul and niche it down strictly to sports medicine, and taking the philosophy of chiropractic, knowing the philosophy and weaving that into it, for me, it's more about results. It's being very ethical, and that's what built my practice. Is if I can't help you, if there's a better way, but I think as doulas, you guys do this, If there's a better way I can help you and it's not me, I'm going to get you to, I'm not afraid to refer. I'm not afraid to talk to your OB or your midwife. I have nothing to hide. I know what I do. I know the value in what I do. I know the piece I play. I don't pee in someone else's Cheerios or Wheaties. I don't put anybody else down. Just like I just didn't put chiropractors down, other chiropractors. It's not what I do. There's value in it. There's value in not overstepping your bounds with vaccines, I feel, which is different in chiropractic. Is it safe? No, it's not sometimes. Like, again, I wish the whole industry would just be honest, and they probably wouldn't have that like polarization of there's nothing all bad and all good, right?
Right.
Where my niche is taking a less softer approach, a less of innate, like I'm doing a lot of studying with Joe Dispenza, I'm finally getting into that at 49 years old, like the essence of life and the you can heal yourself. That was never my focus. My focus was, how do I give somebody the tools that I gave athletes? How do I connect with them and have them understand that this is not their fault and they're not crazy? And there's a lot of things we can do that we do for athletes. Why can't we safely? So it's different. It's a different vibe, if that makes any sense. And neither is wrong. It depends on the mom's philosophy, and I think where I'm trying to teach with my philosophy is, and I know you guys teach this, is to meet somebody where they're at and accept that this is their pregnancy and it's not yours, and the choices that they are comfortable with, to be okay with that, because that's not my job. Is just to get you to be the strongest you can before you have that baby, and then to turn you over to people that do that so much better, like you guys. My job is just to get you to enjoy and to get out of pain and be able to do what you do. That's my role. That's my lane. My lane is not to tell you not to get a virgin or to not get a C-section, or there's enough internet information.
Right.
I have a different way of thinking of it. I think so many people are attached to the philosophy that this is the only way. And I think the best way is to find people that accept and value and understand the sacredness of the best thing in your whole life, and want to be there in a selfless way to support you in any way that they can, even if it's not them.
Fantastic. So you mentioned something earlier, and I'm guessing our audience is probably wondering exactly what you mean by that. I mentioned it in the bio. You mentioned it. Let's talk about the villains of pregnancy. Tell everybody what that is and kind of who they are, why they show up, and how we deal with it.
Okay, so one thing that I'm still grappling with is the use of profanity, or because that's I talk very real. I do know the line, but pregnancy is gritty, and it's not flowers and lotus flowers and yoga poses. Like, these are women that need to work, I'm saying, sometimes, or they need to take care of their kid, or they want to do a CrossFit event, or they want to run a marathon. Like, they don't want flowers and pink stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? They want actual things that they can do. So in order to deflect from the pain, again, being a paramedic, and it is providing levity to something that's serious, so that people like archetypes, and I can describe something like so there's 6 villains. So like Rebecca rib pain is one that you do not know. When I lecture about her in front of 1,000 people or whatever, I call her the Regina George of pregnancy pain, because she is sneaky. She will totally, sabotage your pregnancy. And I tell why. So I tell a story. So it's not facts and figures and percentages. And I lectured to the doctors of the state this, and they said, why don't you use exact muscles to patients? They don't care. I don't want to puff myself up. I know how to talk that way. I've had a patient one time, they heard me talking. They're like, oh, you actually can talk like a doctor. Yeah, I can. All I care about is communicating and helping you so that you understand that I understand. And so when I teach, there's a 6 villains. So there's Linda Loop. They're all named after family members. Okay. Incidentally, I don't know how I came up with that, but I named after my aunt. My aunts are Linda and Sally, right? They're sisters. One is passed, but Linda is low back pain and Sally is sciatica. And then there is my favorite is Peggy Pubis. Hugely a big fan. Nobody talks about it because it's so embarrassing to admit that you have pain in your nether regions to general public, right? That's not something, it's not dinner table conversation, right? There is Rebecca, like I said, there's Helen headache, and there's Wendy wrist pain. there are things that, one, they're real. One, I talk to them about how they look, how these women, how these villains show up to you, and what you're doing to invite them into town. And I think people in our society are going so fast, they're not aware of what they're doing. Biggest thing I can say is like heat feels amazing when it's on, right? If you have an inflamed lower back or piriformis muscle, if you throw some heat on there and you're like, oh, this feels good, so this must be good, you don't put 2 and 2 together that 6 hours later, when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're in 10 out of 10 pain, you think something happened that's like, oh, I just had this. Not, I just did something and brought more blood in. There's a physiological reason. Do you know what I'm saying? So like my assistant was preparing the presentation and she's like, oh my God, I didn't know bananas cause headaches. Do they cause headaches all the time? No, but it's something to be aware of in chiropractic when I lecture to athletes, is to turn up the good and turn on the bad. So what can you do? First you start with you. First, you realize that you're not crazy, right? And what you're doing. I used to be also a reviewer for 15 years where I gauge patients or be employed by insurance companies to see if patients are faking, right? Great job. Never one of my patients, usually auto accidents because there's gain, right? If what I would educate them and educate doctors and my own patients is there's stuff in your body, and you guys can do this as doulas, is like you can feel, it's not a Ouija board or a feeling or it's real. There's physiological changes that you can palpate, and you can, when I speak with a patient, I'm like, man, this is huge. This is huge, and feel how this is hung up, and I'll take pictures of their feet and be like, wow, your leg lengths are off. Or I identify and get confirmation that I am right on the spot. That I know. It's not like, oh, this area is locked up, and I know exactly where their pain is, and educating them on how to fix those things safely. I'm not teaching people to adjust themselves, but I'm going to give you, like I do in practice, every tool, and I'm giving you guys tools safely within your scope, because there's so much you can do before you need to engage someone like me. And why not try that? Because that's my philosophy in practice, which took longer to build. And you guys will find that as you build your practices. If you're okay and have a good enough sense of yourself to be okay with not tricking people or over prescribing, or if you give them those tools, they'll come back to you and they'll refer others to you because you didn't make them dependent. You have their best interest at heart. And I think that's where the niche is, especially with COVID right now. People don't feel safe being immunocompromised coming out. So yeah. Like the perfect storm.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask a totally random question here, but I'm curious, and it's how I work. Bananas and headaches? Tell me.
Yeah, it's just chemicals. It's how your body reacts. Like, I'm sensitive to gluten. I'm not allergic to gluten, but there's certain trigger foods. Chocolate's another one. Coffee for some people is different. There's stuff that people don't know that food is medicine. People don't associate that. And I think sadly going into my 40s, when you realize you have to eat healthier because otherwise you'll pay you can't eat a cheesesteak anymore. Right. Food is medicine, and food causes physiological changes and I'm trying to think of the word, it causes chemical changes. And what's going on in your system, you can heal yourself with food. I never really talk about that because that's not my niche. I refer to other people who are more trained and adept and have their stuff together more than I do, because I don't talk about stuff that I don't have that I don't have done myself. I struggle with eating because I love carbs, but they make you sick, and if you eat a diet of junk, you're going to have headaches, and you need to look at maybe I need to eat some healthier, maybe I need to drink more water. You don't realize you don't drink water, you just drink Diet Cokes all day while you're pregnant. That doesn't work anymore. So
no, although it sure worked for me when I had hormone induced headaches when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And caffeine was a lifesaver, unfortunately. Yeah.
But headaches are something that they're scary. So when I teach the emergency presentations, because that's one of them where somebody says I have the worst headache of my life. You need to know that, and you need to know preeclampsia. And I had preeclampsia. And the way they taught it in paramedic school, it seemed like it was so shockingly obvious. It's not. It was so subtle. I just didn't feel good. And I would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and puke. And it's the doctor's like, oh, here's a prescription for Pepcid. That morning I went in and got checked, and that afternoon it was 220 over 120, and they were taking my baby at 34 weeks. It was not something I was like, oh, this is preeclampsia. So opening the door, knowing what the bad things are when we're tasked to take care of people that's why OB's malpractice is so high.
Mhm.
It's unfortunately, it's a risk. There's risks along, but with
Right.
headaches in a generic sense, once they've been ruled out, our chest gets bigger. Like, so if you apply more force, it's going to put pressure on the muscles in your back and your neck. So start there. That's something, it's not voodoo.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was if we have clients, so you mentioned your villains, and we're going to put some contact information in the feed so that our people can find out more about this, right? But if a postpartum doula says, okay, great, I'm dealing with a client who has low back pain or they have sciatica, I have that, how do I help them? What do they need to know about that?
So they need to know their scope. I think that's very important to know the boundaries of your scope. Like I got talked to by a pelvic floor and they showed me how to do internal stuff. I checked with my state board, I can't do it, and you need to be, just so for the sake of your profession, you need to protect yourself that you're not overstepping your bounds, like stay in your lane, as I said, and not in a discriminatory way, but don't accept the risk of stuff you may know. But in terms of, I do have a book coming out the 4th trimester. So the postpartum doula would be able to help in a different way, because when you're not pregnant, that's different. But the villains I just talked about, they all come back. And one of the major OB groups around here, there's predictable stuff that women will come in with low back pain and sciatica, and they're like, that's what chiropractic is for pregnancy. But then they're carrying those carriers and they're breastfeeding and their breasts are even heavier, and they're constant like this and they're not sleeping. They start getting the pain down their arm. They get the wrist pain, baby wrist. That's predictable, right? So educating them, this is what's coming up next, so that they're not caught off guard. In my book, and so the educational materials is, I have books, right? So there's vectors. I think there's different learners for every style. I have webinars with videos showing if you have a partner, if you don't have a partner, because I don't want to shame people. There's a lot of women going through this. There's a lot of people that don't identify as a woman, which is why I relaunched my book. Just meeting people where they're at, of like, here's stretches that are safe, based on 20 years of me doing this and based on sports medicine. There's stretches, there's exercises, there's massage techniques, right? That you can, I always instruct partners. And I love when I get a guy or a woman who has a partner on the table, and the caring, like, that bonds them, that empowers them, so they don't feel. One of the other books, I have another book, I'm crazy, is Partners, is because I want to help anybody who is in that circle, just like you, to give them the best experience of their life. And there's so much you can do, and before you even need to see me. And then I talk about it in the book, and I know we're going to get to that, is like, when it's time to find somebody, how do you find somebody ethical, and that, because your name I know in speaking with you a lot, Tony, like, in the way that you teach, your name is important, and being a doula is, and doing it the right way, is so critically important. And that's how I am about being a chiropractor. So what do you look for is critical.
Absolutely. And because we're already, as much as I would love to spend all day talking with you, we're running
Sometimes
close, short on time. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, as kind of our final thing here, how does someone find a chiropractor that actually can support this? Because, just like every field, there's people that are great at things, but there are people who kind of specialize. And how do they find somebody who can help their client?
Yeah, this is not a time to just close your eyes and pick out of a website. So as a doula, right, let's speak as a doula first. As a doula, how you can preemptively help, and I've done this as a chiropractor, is to build them a tribe. That's your responsibility. That's your job. If you are really holistically looking at their situation, have lunch, have a Zoom meeting, compare philosophies, go through scenarios. If I refer you a patient, will you respect me and my wishes? And that's important, because it's not about egos, right? It's about helping that patient. Have an arsenal of different chiropractors that if somebody's having a home birth and wants to eat their placenta, and do you know what I'm saying? Give them that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what they're asking for. If you have somebody that's like, chiropractors are quacks, and I don't know about chiropractors, refer them to somebody, and I'm going to get into this as a patient, who takes their time. And as I said, I'm very deep, and I viscerally remember the feeling, because I teach chiropractors. Them walking in your office is a completely different, it's already nerve-wracking walking into a chiropractic office. But if a woman has to ask for help and she's carrying something that potentially could get hurt, do you know what I'm saying? It's so loaded. It takes so much for them to walk in. So I instruct patients, ask to speak to the chiropractor. If they won't talk to you and they think that I still call patients because I want them to be comfortable. This is a big move for them. If this is not for them, then that's okay. You know, if I'm not their best thing, you have to have that selflessness, because that's a test. If somebody's like, no, you need to come in and you stay for an hour and I'm going to do this full evaluation, you know, and they touch. The big thing that I teach with chiropractic is consent. And I speak very fast and I think very quick, but I will tell them that, you know, I want you to be comfortable. I want there to be a safe word. If there's anything that I do that you're not comfortable with, like, I start that way because I want them to feel safe. The biggest thing with chiropractic is they'll come in and say, I'm terrified you're going to do my neck because of the stuff and propaganda in the media. I start laughing and I said, you're here for low back, right? You know, I'm not going to do your neck, you know, like why mess with something that they're viscerally afraid of? Take that off the table. Do you know what I'm saying? There's other stuff you can do. So that's the Bloom philosophy. And that spans not just chiropractors, but having a deep respect for boundaries, how a woman is treated, how they're referred to, how they want to be, you know, they, them, you know, being a resource, you know, getting over yourself to use all the powers that you have to help them.
Absolutely. So we are almost out of time already, which seems crazy because it feels like we just started talking. But I think you and I could probably talk all day long. Yeah, exactly. So before we wrap up, is there anything final that you want to share with our audience? Kind of one big takeaway that you feel is really important that they understand?
The hill that I'm going to die on. I have 3 legacy goals, but the narrative that I want to change before I leave this earth, and the thing that I need you guys to get, is that pregnancy is something sacred and women deserve to enjoy it, and that pregnancy pain is common and not normal. If you can just get that there are options and they should not just suck up that, you know, I need you to understand that basic principle. We have so much stuff as being a woman that's not fun. It's magic when you can enjoy it, you know. And that's the change we make as doulas and chiropractors. And I think it's just, we're lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Real Talk. It has been an honor to have you and to learn from you. And I know our audience is going to want to learn more. So we're going to put all that in the feed so that they can find you and reach out. They can check out your books and learn more about this. And so thank you so much. I really have enjoyed talking.
I love this. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience for joining us. If you have any questions around this topic or anything related to the villains of pregnancy and how to get them out of town, put those in feed and tag Dr. Brandie or tag Newborn Care Solutions. We'll make sure that you get answers. And if you're wanting to watch this segment or any of our other segments or access any of our educational content, go to newborncaresolutions.com and click on the education tab, or head on over to our YouTube channel and just put Real Talk Newborn Care Solutions in the search engine and it all comes up. Thank you for joining us tonight and have a fantastic evening.